Welcome to this guide on maintaining your U.S. permanent resident status the smart way. Today we'll unpack the so-called 180-day rule, explain the rolling calendar concept that immigration actually looks at, and show you how to avoid patterns that suggest you've abandoned your residency. We'll also cover special attention points if you're filing Form I-751 to remove conditions, and end with practical travel planning tips and documentation strategies. Let's begin, and then smoothly transition into the agenda so you can see what's coming up. Here's the roadmap for today. First, we will debunk the 180-day misconception. Next, we'll define what the rolling calendar really is and why it matters. Then, we'll categorize risk by absence length. After that, we'll focus on I-751 filers and highlight why their patterns get extra scrutiny. We'll move on to practical tips to build and show strong U.S. ties, take a couple of quick quizzes, and finish with a concise markdown cheat sheet. With that, let's transition to myth versus reality. Many permanent residents have heard an oversimplified 180-day rule. Stay half the year in the United States and you're fine. In reality, there is no statute mandating 180 days each calendar year. Instead, officers look at your intent and the totality of your travel patterns over time. This rolling analysis can create risk, even when individual trips seem safe. Now that we've clarified the misconception, let's move into a visual flow of how absence length affects risk. This flowchart shows how absence length affects risk. If your trip is under 6 months, it's generally safe for maintaining permanent resident status, though it can reset the continuous residence requirement for naturalization. If your trip is between 6 months and 1 year, officers may presume abandonment, and you need strong evidence of ties to the United States to overcome this presumption upon re-entry. If your trip exceeds 1 year, you typically need a re-entry permit and still face significant risk. Across all categories, officers will still examine your overall pattern using a rolling calendar approach. With that in mind, let's explore the rolling calendar in more depth. This timeline illustrates 2 long trips, one from late in the year through December, and another from January through spring of the next year. Individually, each is under 6 months. However, when immigration looks at your pattern across a rolling 12-month window, the combined 10 months abroad can strongly signal that your permanent residence may be elsewhere. The timeline also notes potential impacts on your naturalization continuous residence clock. Next, let's compare the fixed calendar myth to the rolling calendar reality. On the left, the fixed calendar view focuses on January to December and can mislead people into thinking that splitting trips over a year-end avoids risk. On the right, the rolling calendar approach checks any 12-month span, detecting when 2 long absences, close together, still add up to extensive time abroad. The rolling model better aligns with how residency intent is assessed in practice. Now, let's address why this matters, especially for I-751 filers. For those filing Form I-751 to remove conditions, your ongoing intent to reside permanently in the United States is under close review. Extended absences during the conditional period, especially those exceeding 6 months, can trigger additional questioning about whether the United States is truly your home. You should be prepared with evidence like employment records, leases or mortgages, resident tax filings, bank statements, and documentation of family ties. To mitigate risk, minimize travel while your I-751 is pending. Next, we'll summarize absence lengths and consequences in a table. This table summarizes the risk profile. Under 6 months, the status risk is low, but the naturalization clock may reset and your overall pattern is still reviewed. Between 6 and 12 months, there is a presumption of abandonment, and the continuous residence for naturalization is likely interrupted, so strong ties evidence is crucial. Over 12 months, the risk is high, often requiring a re-entry permit, and the naturalization clock is interrupted. Now let's move into practical, value-added advice to reduce risk. Here are practical steps. First, prioritize evidence of intent: employment, housing, resident tax filings, U.S. bank accounts, and family presence. Second, avoid clustering long trips. After any near 6-month absence, plan a period of strong physical presence in the United States over the next 12 to 18 months. Third, during the I-751 period, minimize travel and be prepared for your interview with robust documentation. Fourth, maintain resident tax status and active U.S. banking to show daily life ties. Fifth, keep travel receipts, boarding passes, itineraries, employer letters, and utilities as proof of a U.S. home base. Finally, if you foresee an absence over 12 months, apply for a re-entry permit before you leave. With those tips in mind, let's visualize your tie-building strategy with a mind map. This mind map places U.S. ties at the center, branching into employment, housing, taxes, family, banking, community, and documentation. Under employment, include items like pay stubs and employer letters. For housing, list lease or mortgage and utilities. For taxes, indicate resident returns. Family covers spouse and children with school records. Banking shows active accounts with regular transactions. Community includes a driver's license or state ID and memberships. Documentation contains travel receipts and itineraries. Altogether, these nodes form a compelling picture that your real home remains in the United States. Next, let's turn these concepts into an actionable checklist. Use this checklist before each international trip. Confirm your purpose and length, ideally staying under 6 months. If you approach the 6-month mark, plan a substantial period in the United States afterward to avoid clustered trip risk. Gather tie evidence, employment letter, lease or mortgage, tax returns, and bank statements. Keep detailed travel records like itineraries, boarding passes, and passport stamps. If you expect to be away for 12 months or more, apply for a re-entry permit before leaving. While I-751 is pending, reduce travel and prepare documentation for the interview. Upon return, resume normal U.S. activities and update your evidence to reflect ongoing residences. Now, let's test your understanding with a quick quiz. Question: is there a law that requires green card holders to be physically present in the United States for at least 180 days each calendar year to maintain status? Options: A. Yes, 180 days per calendar year is legally required. B. No, there is no fixed 180-day rule. Officers use a rolling pattern analysis. C. It depends only on your last trip's length. D. Only I-751 filers must meet 180 days per year. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is no, there is no fixed 180-day rule. Officers use a rolling pattern analysis. The key is the totality of circumstances and your demonstrated intent to maintain U.S. residences. Evaluated over time, not strictly by calendar year. Question: if you spend 5 months abroad from August to December and another 5 months from January to May, what does the rolling calendar suggest? Options: A. Each trip is fine, so no risk. B. Combined 10 months in a 12-month span suggests potential abandonment risks. C. It only matters if you hit 365 consecutive days outside the USD. You can avoid risk by returning on December 31st. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is that a combined 10 months in a 12-month span suggests potential abandonment risk. Even though neither individual trip exceeds 6 months, the pattern indicates you may be residing elsewhere, which is precisely what the rolling calendar approach detects. This pie chart offers a conceptual breakdown of factors that commonly drive risk assessments. Absence length and clustered patterns form the majority of concern. Weak U.S. ties further increase risk, while travel during the I-751 pending period adds pressure. The remaining category includes miscellaneous factors, like inconsistent tax filing or unusual travel explanations. Next, let's include a concise legal disclaimer to frame the information properly. Disclaimer: this content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Immigration outcomes depend on individual facts and circumstances. For advice tailored to your situation, consult a qualified immigration attorney. With that said, let's wrap up with a practical, markdown-style cheat sheet you can reference. Here is a concise cheat sheet using Markdown. It lists quick rules of thumb, evidence categories to maintain, and practical thresholds and actions. It also includes the tip to plan at least 12 to 18 months of strong U.S. presence after any near 6-month absence. This serves as a handy reference. Now, let's summarize the key takeaways. In summary, there is no fixed 180-day legal requirement. Officers evaluate your travel history using a rolling calendar approach. Clustered trips can create serious risk, even when individual trips are under 6 months. I-751 filers receive enhanced scrutiny and should minimize absences. Strong, well-documented U.S. ties are essential, and you should plan travel carefully and keep comprehensive records. Finally, let's close out with a quick thank you and a call to action. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please like the video, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe for more immigration and residency insights. I'd love to hear your biggest travel planning challenge or questions in the comments below.